Thank you, Glenn. I don't know. We're fresh from the club, so y'all just have to forgive us a little bit.
I had to catch my breath before even talking.
Yes, yes. Wow. It really is my pleasure and my honor to introduce two colleagues that we have over the last 3 years, bonded together in some very interesting ways. And it is an honor to introduce them. I'm going to start with my sister, Amri Lambert. Dr. Lambert is the Vice President for Global Diversity and Inclusion at Portland State University. And I'm going to let her tell her story. It's a wonderful story. Amri called us, and there are 5 of us in the holy crew that did this work together. Amri is also in that work. Amri is in Basel, Switzerland. He is just an amazing person coming out of corporate America and now his own individual business owner. So we have a wonderful mix in the two of them in terms of what is the corporate world as well as the inclusion world. And we ask you to come for this part, Dr. Lambert and Amri, because we surprised our own selves. I won't say that. She won't say that. But we see, look at him shaking his head. We surprised our own self. We thought we were going to have a large systems change for about 300 people. And Amri and Amri, you tell the story and we'll take any questions you want. 300 became 900. And we did it all virtually during the pandemic. And the amount of inclusion in that conversation from Black, Indigenous, brown people, white people, people just showed up. And we managed that through technology. So there's a whole story, and I'm sure we'll share it as a resource, but I'm not going to take too much longer. Amri and Amri, thank you. We need to unmute them.
Good morning from Pacific time, and so grateful to be here. Thank you, Dr. Royal Arnana, for who you are, for what you do. Congratulations. 75 years is no joke. And as the DJ Bruce Black said, I wish you 75 more. And so I hope I have the ability to share my screen. Yes, I do. Thank you very much. And so what we would like to do this morning is provide 2 lenses on our journey, right? It's one journey, but multiple lenses. Actually, you're getting 2.15 because Kathy shared a little bit at the beginning there. But so going back to 2020, summer of 2020, which I actually been thinking about a lot and trying to remind myself of that energy. So I actually welcome the opportunity to be able to talk about this today. The energy across the country, across the globe, certainly in Portland and definitely at Portland State, was that something had to change, right? So this activation around local and national issues, I had said yes to the job in April of 2020, and George Floyd, unfortunately, was murdered in May. So I was leaving one job and starting another, kind of literally, because I was on 2 different coasts, so literally burning the candle at both ends. And then I made the move to Portland in August. And even before I made the move, because I had been engaging with the campus, it became very clear that we needed to move, and we needed to move quickly, right? And we had to harness the energy that was really active on our campus and in our local community. We really had to figure out how to both honor the pain. The pain was legitimate. People were not making things up. We had to honor the pain, but we wanted to provide opportunities to transform the pain, right? And so anger is pain, but pain is also energy, right? And so the opportunity to be able to harness that and hopefully, take that energy and move it forward to get to our new future is what we've been trying to do. This journey continues. We are a work in progress, so we are not here to tell you like all the great things. We're not at the end of the journey. It's not all figured out. But we are learning as we are on our journey, and we're sharing those insights with you. So as Dr. Royal mentioned, we in 6 weeks will pull together a large-scale summit between Zoom technology and YouTube live stream. We were able to get a lot of people engaged. And I will allow Amri to provide a lens on it from the external perspective, working on this with Portland State University. But from our perspective, as we worked on this, it was really important that we had a whole body event. And so the power of the performing arts, really integrating the performing arts into the event, we wanted to affirm people's identities. For us, this was our lens. For us, we did not want to say Black Lives Matter because everybody was saying it and Black folks were not feeling like their lives mattered, right? And so, but what we wanted to do was communicate in other ways to the heart that to us and in the space that we were creating, Black lives indeed mattered, as did the lives of BIPOC folks and all the other minoritized folks who were in the space. And so the performing arts was really a way for us to do that. In order to get there in 6 weeks, in order to be able to make the commitments we did, in order to continue the journey, we had to have a leader who was willing to take a real step. And so I would like to shout out to President Percy, who is the president of Portland State University, because every institution across the nation had to do something, even if it was just a statement, but everybody had to respond, right? The energy was that great. Our president decided to make racial justice his highest priority. So ensuring that way beyond the news cycle, right? This would be something that the institution was leaning in and focusing on. We also needed to mobilize a trusted team of folks who were willing to come together and act quickly. So Nana, the Silberts, Amri, Angelique, it's like drop everything. I hope nothing pressing is going on because we need you. And we're going to meet and we're going to listen and we're going to learn and we're going to figure this out. I was a new member of the community. So we were like building this bridge, right, as we were walking on it. But we also needed to mobilize our internal community. And so very quickly, right, I'm a new person, but we needed to build trust, and because we needed all of them to come to bear and help us hold that space, but more importantly, to make sure that the outcomes of our summit turned into a plan. And then throughout our journey, we have been thinking about hearing authentically and supporting healing. So for us, appreciative inquiry was the tool and the methodology that was going to work, right? Because our present was so painful, we needed to be future facing, right? We needed to create capacity to create something different. And so we also needed to be super asset based, right? And so when there's all of this pain that is tied to the way we are oppressed, we needed the opportunity to celebrate all of the things that are good, all of the things that are giving life, all of the things that are supporting our resilience and our thriving. We needed to center and elevate those things as well. Again, we wanted to touch all parts of us. We wanted to get to our spirits. Our spirits were broken in 2020, right? We wanted to be able to get to our spirits as well. And then we really wanted to, our institution has 3 priorities, and we really wanted to lean into the intersection of racial justice, student success, and community engagement. And that's important to Prime, because I will tell you how our journey continues before I turn it to Amri. But for us, as we leaned into appreciative inquiry, we were really interested in the asset-based approach and the generative approach, but it did not always have to be positive. Like, we went in very clearly. People were in pain, right? When I go, oh my gosh, well, I'm sorry you're hurting. Well, but woohoo, let's talk about the joy. So we needed to be able to create some space for that. And so what we did, which is maybe a little different, is that when we started our summit, we started with caucuses. so that people had the opportunity, they felt like there was a safe space to come in, that they were able to tell their truth, and that truth was going to be validated, right? So that people don't come in, we're not bringing minoritized people in at the beginning, and then they're triggered right at the beginning of an event that's supposed to be a co-creation event. And then we ended our journey together, right? We build bridges in that space and beyond. But there also, if we're going to create equity and justice, there has to be an opportunity to be able to speak truth to power. And there has to be capacity to hear. And that is capacity that needs to be continually built. And so we all need to continue to stretching ourselves, right? I always make comparisons to physical development because that's an area that I've had to stretch, right? And so there is no substitute for it hurts. You know, I lifted weights, it hurts, right? You're tearing down muscles so you can build new ones. It hurts. The answer is not to stop lifting weights. The answer is to continue, right? And to move forward through the plane so that you can build some new muscles, right? So that's the analogy that I always think about when we're doing this work. Our wonderful members of our community, right? They were looking for a place to focus collectively on purpose. This is work that is bigger than all of us. This is work that will last after all of us. And so folks came together, dropped everything and came together to be able to figure this out. And those folks have stayed with the journey. Folks also thrive when they get out of their silos, right? The opportunity to connect to the whole, to the opportunity to connect across functions. And then, as you know, people commit to what they help create. And then people like to be stretched. People like to, our brains tends to be lazy, but people like when they're learning new things, when they're building new capacities. And so really the ability to use the others in our internal and external community to move the work forward was critical. One of my favorite quotes I've ever heard is that leadership is an inner game, but it's a public act. And personally, as I think of use of self, which Dr. Royal centers a lot, because if you're going to be part of change, if you're going to lead change, you are going to use yourself. You are an agent of change. And so the work that we are constantly doing on the inner level, really connecting to our North Star over and over again, because this is hard work. Their setbacks, their disappointments, you are holding your stuff and other people's stuff. And really, so being able to like be anchored in who you are and what you believe in is really important. But you also have to have a deep love for the community that is hurting, for the community that's calling out. You have to be able to persist. And I like to say stubborn persistence, because there'll be lots of opportunities to give up and to back down. And for me, one of the biggest pieces around the use of self was the need to own the fact that I am a surrogate for the system, right? So when people see me, they see Portland State University. Coming in as a Black woman in 2020, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm a Black woman. I need to do my own healing. Like I need my own space. I need to figure my own stuff out. But I needed, and I continue to need to own the fact that I am a representative of the system. And therefore, because the system is this invisible kind of abstract thing with real tangible consequences, then I have a responsibility as a surrogate to do things that systems maybe cannot do. And that is to hold that space for hearing and for healing, and to let folks know that their pain has been heard. Because if they believe it has been heard, then maybe there's an opportunity for them to lay it down, or at least lay it down for a little bit, to provide an opportunity to see if we can co-create a new future. And so what I would like to do is, because as my colleagues can tell you, those 6 weeks were an interesting time. And so what I would like to do is actually revisit 2020 and share the remarks that I shared at the summit, to kind of hold that space and to kind of let folks know, those hundreds of people know that we had been listening and that we had heard, and we were trying to figure out a way to move forward. I can't breathe. Again, who would have imagined 2020 would be 2014 all over again? Again, we watched a life taken without regard, feeling our anxiety and panic rise alongside the witnesses to a murder. Once again, we are gripped with a sense of powerlessness, of grief, and of disbelief, unable to draw a line connecting the alleged crime to the resulting extrajudicial punishment. I can't breathe. What my daughter says when I engage in relentless tickling. Now an abrupt reminder that at any point in time, life can be interrupted by race. Life can be changed, life can be ended. These reminders have been everywhere. Who gets to sleep and wake up safely? Who gets to go for a run? Who gets to watch birds? Who gets to take a nap in common spaces? Who gets to love the wrong person? Who gets to barbecue in public? Who gets to campaign in nice neighborhoods? On a macro level, who gets to be angry? Who gets to be difficult? Who gets to push back? Who gets to be a maverick? And fundamentally, who gets to be human? I can't breathe. It has become the shorthand BIPOC folks are using to describe what it feels like to be in spaces that were not created for them. It is the exhaustion, the censorship, the vulnerability, the doubt, the discomfort, the stress, and the all-out rage that comes from sitting at someone else's table and playing by someone else's rules. Of the many folks from past jobs I've spoken with this summer, my students have stuck with me the most because I have felt mostly helpless to assist them. You want to build an infrastructure to do the work? Call me. I don't have all the answers, but I can definitely help. But what do I say to my students who are grieving, some for the first time because of their age, as they grapple with the signals everywhere that indicate that their lives are not valued? What can I say besides you matter to me? You matter to us. What can I do besides sit with them over the phone or on Zoom calls, allowing folks to talk and to cry or sit in silence? What tools do I have besides saying over and over to my students in ways that are part hope, part prayer, part defiance, and part determination? You will not die. You will not die. In spite of oppressive systems and structures, and through this devastation, you will not die. You will make it through. You will find your light again. National tragedies have added to the weight of the local for us and have ripped at the scabs on our own current and historical wounds. The tragic loss of Jason Washington, the raised voices that have not been heard, the screams that have been silently uttered because no one will get it, or the cost of sharing could be too great. The hours and love that have gone into plans that have not been implemented. The rhetoric that is not being matched by action. The promise of what could be that has not become reality. The history of exclusion and oppression in and of the land. All amplified by a pandemic, wildfires, families as teachers, and an election with very high stakes. There is fatigue, anxiety, disappointment, frustration, bitterness, and the apathy and disengagement that only comes after one too many dashed hopes and one too many heartbreaks. What do you do when the wounds are too great, the memories are too painful, the offenses too many, the sense of betrayal too deep, and everything is so fraught, but you must find a way forward? In trying to answer these vexing questions, I have looked at nations who have faced this dilemma. The atrocities committed were so horrific that no amount of punishment will be satisfactory. Yet the country had to somehow hold together. These countries, starting with Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu in South Africa, and hopefully someday soon, my two homes, the United States and Nigeria, have turned to truth and reconciliation efforts to find a way forward. Justice would have to look a little different than originally thought. It will become an unflinching look at the truth, an honest acknowledgement of harm done, and an acceptance of responsibility in exchange for amnesty or release from punishment due. This is not the kind of quickly demanded or unearned forgiveness, that ever-charged term for BIPOC communities, because it is often used to prevent righteous rage and full expressions of humanity. This forgiveness is earned through acknowledgement and responsibility. And it is about choice, a decision that wrestles BIPOC freedom away from a dominant person or system so they can breathe. We are a community in need of healing and reconciliation. Healing requires forgiveness. Forgiveness is facilitated by truth and accountability. Reconciliation requires repair. As Martin Luther King Jr. so powerfully put it, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So you see, we're all players in this symphony of our lives and our institution, and we find ourselves on a quest to find our preferred future. We are not after perfection here, but we are in search of transformation. For us to be who we can be, who we should be, we must see, hear, and respond in new ways, and we must do it over and over again until our new ways become our now ways. We must plow and plant and nurture what currently seems like dead soil until new life springs forth. We must surface and attend to hidden and competing commitments that will sabotage the work, and we must engage with our fear of failure, success, and change. We must create opportunities to rebuild relationships and trust. We must create opportunities to innovate for justice and equity. And we must build our capacity to own this work at every level of the organization, starting but not ending at the top. We must bridge from our pain to our restoration, from our present to our future, and from our despair to our possibilities. We need a purpose, a vision, and an ambition so great in this area that it will transform us. We get to do what so many countries have been unable to do, even if we do it imperfectly. We get to center and enable the upliftment and the advancement of BIPOC folks in ways that speak to their intersecting identities and different experiences and needs, and in ways that uplift the whole. We know many of you have been here before and feel you cannot risk dreaming of a different outcome. We need you, we ask you, we invite you to take the risk once more, to imagine, what if we actually move forward this time? What would it take for us to face truth, to deal with impact, to repair, and to find new paths to move forward together? That is the work before us. We are here to find a pathway to our next, because our current reality is not serving us. And we know we cannot get to next from here without doing things differently. We are here to create a container for our hearing, our healing, our elevation, and our thriving. If anyone could do this alone, we would not need to be here. But we need all of us to do this. The responsibilities and the work might be different, but we all have work to do.
Mhm.
As we imagine possibilities and realities that do not yet exist, we acknowledge the headwinds that face us. We know that success will not come easy or quick, and we know progress will be uneven and messy, and that there will be setbacks. We have a sense of what the future will demand from us for possibility to become reality. Yet, part hope, part prayer, part defiance, and part determination, we say, in spite of it all and through it all, we will tap into the power, light, and assets in our community, and we will fight for, we will work for, and we will hang in there for a future that is for more of us. With all the brilliance and passion I've encountered as I enter this community, I am going to bet on us getting this done. We have what we need, and we are the ones we have been waiting for. This moment must matter. We must make it matter. This is our time to act. The future is calling. So in
Dr. Lambert,
go ahead, Dr. Royal.
no, I was going to say, every time I hear your call to action, I realize that that is the call to action, and the future called, and it's waiting on us. Ashe, omio.
Ashe. We built the plan. We have completed year one of the plan. And tonight we have tonight and all day tomorrow, we are hosting a mini summit for our Black community. So we're moving external, so part of our plan. So that's why I mentioned the community engagement. We are in and of Portland. And so our futures are intertwined with the future of Portland and the state of Oregon. But we are bringing our Black community together for a day and a half to make sure that this story and this journey is for all of us. And so our journey continues. And I would like to turn it over to Amri to share some.
Right.
That's what I experienced the entire time that I was engaged with these powerful people. And I was lucky, to be honest with you, to be a part of this, because I just happened to talk to Tony Silbert, and he said, you should just come join us. And I said, well, okay. I had no idea what I was joining. But I quickly found out. And it was perhaps, given my situation that I'll talk about in a little bit, it took me in a direction that I could have never imagined, and it awoke something that I somewhat numbed for a while. So I want to talk a little bit about just my reflections on this and how incredibly blessed and kind of enriched and enlightened I was through the process. So I'm gonna, first of all, just say thank you for the opportunity to be in dialogue with all of you and this community. I'm in the presence, and I'm very clear that I'm in the presence of giants. I'm standing on your ample shoulders, and it's quite humbling and somewhat anxiety producing. And of course, I know all of your compassion and the humility and the personal work that you've done. So that reduces my angst considerably. But as I get into this, I'd like to personally thank Dr. Royal, who I had the honor to team with in this work, along with Dr. Lambert, Tony, and Jenny Silbert, as well as the PSU community. And I can't emphasize the PSU community enough, because it's an important distinction for me to make. The community drove this dialogue, and if not, it wouldn't have been possible. And I know the work that all of you've done in T groups and other ways that you've done this work over the years, that's kind of, clear. That's the community always drives the dialogue. But in the external world and in the corporate world that I've been in, oftentimes it's a few people that drive the dialogue, and it isn't from those who are most impacted, and it isn't from their hearts. And this was from the beginning, not just because dialogue is essential to the work, but because the engagement and commitment created the form and the viability of this summit. It created the conditions for the summit to be seen as what I think was an accelerator, perhaps even a catalyst to go from dream to destiny, if we're using appreciative inquiry terminology. So I'd never been part of engaging a group this size. I think when I heard it was like 300, I was like, oh, okay, that's a lot. And then we turn up and it's 900, and I'm like, wow, just the scope, the diversity, the breadth and depth of the people who were there before the summit came to life, as well as those who continue to do the work after. It's a very beautiful thing. And so the work, the dialogue, the dissent, the confluence of frustration and fatigue and disappointment, it really created the pathway for breakthroughs to be delivered. And I'll talk a little more about my experience with that now. So let me pull up slides. Can everybody see my slide? Okay. So, you know, I thought this was a time to act, and that's really big for me because a lot of times we were just talking, and I think people were somewhat maybe very tired of talking. So this was not about how much we could kind of share, how much we know, and our depth in this conversation. It was really about where are we going from the pain into and through the pain, with the pain, into this anticipatory future. And that's what really struck me. I was quite honestly in a space where I was a little bit, I wasn't very positive about the way things were transpiring in the racial justice movement in the country. I felt like a lot of people jumped in and got in, and I understood their passion and enthusiasm. And I didn't feel like we had organized to the point as practitioners in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space to actually create the real transformational change that we had the window of opportunity to do in ways that we hadn't, maybe in my lifetime, never. And so, you know, my kind of moving into middle-agedness had me a little bit more conservative. And, you know, I wasn't dismissive, but I was quite hesitant. So I had this doubt. It was there and I couldn't shake it. And then I had a chance to meet Amri, Lambert, and Kathy Royal. Now it's sometimes hard for me not to get a little emotional here because I can't really fully get my mind around how quickly at the intersection of the ground shaking and our historical reality, that I was clear that being in this place at this time had little to do with this summit. So the summit was a bonus for me, to be honest with you, for me personally. But for me to get in there and to be able to interact with somebody that saw something much bigger. So this was my mirror and window into the art of the possible, as Dr. Royal set up for us. And shared with the audience. What had been missing for me was that, yes, we must acknowledge the historical reality and we need to know that the ground is shaking. We could feel it. It wasn't something that we had to make up. We didn't need to be told that this was the case. What was missing for me was the anticipatory future, the co-creation of the new reality. And in the time that we were together up until the summit in designing and then moving into actually having the summit, the possibility returned to the forefront of my consciousness. And for that, I'll be ever grateful to my colleagues, teachers, elders, friends for such transformation in my own mind. So this notion of the art of the possible, and Kathy talked about this with the group as we entered into the conversation to talk about the historical relationship of the soul remembers and the land remembers, and to talk about what was currently in place, how things are operating and the pain in the soil, but still there was hope. And how could we anticipate what we wanted to create together next? And how could we bring all this together to create a change using ourselves, seeing what's in the mirror and what we need to see out the window? If not paying attention to both, it's impossible for us to easily interrupt systems that we aim to transform. And Kathy laid that out so clearly for the audience. So it set a tone, along with Amri's introductory comments. It set us up for what we wanted to produce out of that day. And we weren't there when we entered into the day at the beginning. People were sitting back kind of like, let's wait and see what they do. It didn't matter how many conversations happened before. There needed to be the tone set and the arts and the generational kind of engagement in the conversation was there. So the process of this entire body of work that persists until today had to be built on trust, and everything done during the event reinforced this from the heart of the people and engaged us in this 9-hour dialogue Now, I think you all heard, I live in Basel, Switzerland. So this started at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And we went until about 5 or 6 p.m. Pacific time. So fortunately, the time was where my clock was set back an hour. So I wasn't as late, but we went to 12:30 Central European time. And I don't remember one time being tired. It gave me an energy that, took me in places I couldn't have expected. So as we moved into this, the question became, how do we create a container where dialogue is more transparent, where we're working with people from all walks of life. We're creating the conditions for people to take this trust on. So what was missing in the racial justice conversations that I was hearing is that the AI approach wasn't there. We weren't moving in the direction of what we wanted to create. We were oftentimes kind of, in a way, moving towards conversations that didn't pull us out from out of where we were. And it was hard to do that. People were in pain. But taking an AI approach where we weren't looking at the rights and wrongs, it was clear that being right has never transformed anything. And that was clear from the beginning, and nobody came in. I never, it's easy. And even now, when I'm working with organizations, there's people that are still feeling that pain, and they're blame placing. There's blame to be had, but it's not transformational. So we got locked in throughout that day into what we wanted to create together. And that was probably one of the most beautiful things that I had heard. So to be honest with you, at the time of the summit, it felt like for too many, as we moved into this notion and thought that we're going to move into a dream phase of AI, the notion of dreaming for me and many others was fleeting. Like, what are we going to dream for, given what we've seen? People wanted action. They wanted it now. And it was a Malcolm-like, by any means necessary fervor that most people had, and that some people still have. So it wasn't dreaming about an anticipatory future. That had to be moved into. So the structure of using AI, the work that was done prior to the summits, the inspirational speakers and music, the stories that were generationally represented of the participants, it created what I would say, in the language of Robert Fitz, it created a path of least resistance towards our ability to dream together. We created a structure to move in that direction. And so for me, this was where I began to see that some of the caution and resistance that was present, it began to transform during the dream discussions. Now, it was probably happening for many others before that, but in the dream discussions, it was very clear that we were moving very deliberately toward this anticipatory future. Now, as Dr. Royal called it, we were in the process of planting new seeds, and they were put forth, they were being planted, and people seemed determined to do what we needed to do to help them germinate. And everybody was really clear about that. And it was probably one of for me, it was like the turning point of where I saw and began to really, everything that I believed was possible actually started bubbling up for me. And I was like, wow, this is working, so everything was there. The energy was there. People were engaged. And this was a huge group. And I never felt like the size limited anybody's engagement. And I've been in live rooms with 100 people doing a summit, and some people feel like they can't engage even when you break out into small groups. But I did not experience that in the dialogues that we had. So we've all heard this before. People commit to what they help to create. That was a very clear reality. My contribution in this was facilitating the design part. I personally define inclusion as actions that create the conditions for people to thrive and organizations to be generative. And that requires an unambiguous prioritization in alignment with purpose. And I felt like that was very clearly there. So all these things were in motion as we moved into the section of the day. There was fatigue, but it was out of love, and there was a knowing that we had just begun. And so I left the session energized, and also in reflection, I really thought about whether I had internalized oppression to an extent that I had these doubts going in. And when I went from kind of the engagement with this group to designing this session, I really looked back to see, have I begun the process of believing that something's possible here? And I left very clearly that was the case. I came in, I was so energized. I walked home from my colleague's office. So my wife, when I came in, looked at me puzzled, half asleep. And as I was rambling about having that sense of possibility and some of the things that I experienced in it, and she said she couldn't keep her eyes open. So I finally shut up and went to another room to reflect. And then I thought back to June 2020, when my family, my step twins, who were 12 at the time, they're Swiss, and my wife, who was born and raised in Switzerland, but she's Spanish, along with my son, who's 1 year old. I was convinced, they convinced a hesitant and skeptical me, who's also an epidemiologist, an infectious disease epidemiologist, that I should go out and march in support of Black Lives Matter. And I never marched in the US. My work was about what I did behind the scenes. But as I walked in solidarity with the people of Basel and across the world, I did feel that sense of possibility that day. I felt like it was different. And then it waned. And then seeing what occurred as a possibility vacuum emerged as the year proceeded. But the Time to Act Equity Summit and its people elevated this so that I could see, hear, and feel it once again. And I think those who went through it, those who are acting from it, all of us that were involved in it, quite honestly, will never be the same as a result of it. And I never could have thought that something that was done virtually could have that kind of impact, not just on PSU, but on a greater good. And the more we talk about this, the more I see how much possibility was created for PSU, for Portland, for the state of Oregon, for the country. And in my case, given where I sit, for people outside of the country and beyond across the planet. So thank you for that opportunity, Kathy, Ame, Jenny, and Tony, who aren't on with us, and hope to get into more dialogue about today.
Wow. Well, both of my friends, you've taken me back and brought me forward. I certainly realized how important that work was. And it is amazing, and I'm hoping you'll talk some more about it when we do questions and answers, that it is ongoing. And for me, that was one of the things, Amri, that gave me the art of the possible as well. I know Kate Cowie has heard me say on many occasions, we need new seeds. And so thinking about what you planted is really the art of the possible. A large group, an academic environment where we teach the future. You know, one of the reasons I teach is because in teaching, you can touch the future. So I'm going to let this be open. And if you'll, Glenn, and you'll help me, I'll help you. We'll do the question and answer together. We have about 20 minutes. I think that's going to be a wonderful opportunity. Let's see what people want to know and hear.
So if you can,
You'll get in the queue.
We have Ed Shine with his hand up, and then after Ed, if you can find the reaction button to raise your hand with a reaction, that would help us out. Dr. Shine, please.
You know, we have to give a 20-second, there's a 20-second, there we go.
There
About
it
a
is.
20-second delay.
Now you're unmuted. But your audio is not working, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Absolutely.
can.
Okay, it was on my end. I had to push my button.
Good. I do that too.
I'm very excited about several elements, but my mind is very divergent, so I want to throw something really crazy out there. We know that to get certain kinds of action, we need these large system change kinds of programs where we figure out how to get larger groups working together in various ways to do something. The thing that I want to throw out there for our consideration is I believe the future is quite dim around the environment. It may already be too late to really fix global warming. I think the globe will warm and will make it uncomfortable. And all the indications are that when we have disasters like this, it's the disadvantaged, the migrants, the inner city that bears the brunt of the bad stuff. When the floods hit, when the heat hits, it's not going to be the rich suburbs that will suffer. It will be the inner city that will suffer. And is this idea of Black Lives Matter, immigrants matter, diversity matters, should that be combined in some way with how can those groups collectively develop a better plan for how to cope with global warming than we currently have? Because I suspect when those 100-degree times hit, it'll be the Black community, the inner city, it'll be the disadvantaged crowd that will bear the brunt of it. And should you be preparing for that? Should we be preparing for that in a positive coping way? Because it will combine then gun control, disaster control. It will all come together around a better way to cope with what will environmentally happen anyway.
Thank you, Dr. Shine.
Absolutely. Go ahead. I feel like somebody wanted to say something.
No,
I just was going to ask whether that resonates in any way whatsoever.
It absolutely does, and it's an honor to share space with you, Dr. Shine. I honor you and your work. Absolutely does, and I think one of the interesting things about Portland is it's a city, but it's small enough that you can kind of touch all pieces, right? So that's something I've learned in the 2 years. And because one of the challenges with climate justice work is that BIPOC folks who have been doing the work have not necessarily been recognized, right? And so they're on the front lines, as you said, because they're going to be on the front lines or already on the front lines of impact, negative impact. But then, they're not getting the funding, they're not getting the notoriety or with the work. And so there really is, so Portland State has launched a climate justice initiative. And what we have been saying and pushing is really emphasizing BIPOC voices, but especially Indigenous voices, right? Folks who have been stewards of the land long before anybody went to school to go figure out what environmental justice looks like, right? And the practices that Indigenous folks do actually are the practices that will heal the land. And so that there are these conversations and partnerships that are happening in the area that are actually really exciting when it comes to climate justice.
I'll take a shot as well, and to echo Ame, it is absolutely a pleasure to be in your presence, Dr. Shine. So there's two things here. I think sometimes when you talk about climate justice, we haven't emphasized the interdependencies of climate justice and racial and social justice. And so we've actually kind of looked at them as two parallel tracks kind of running next to each other. But we know, and this didn't just happen, I'm in Europe right now, and that's why you see a fan in my background, because it's burning up and I don't have AC. That's one of the American things that I very much miss. I know it's not good for the environment, but I do miss it. But we haven't talked about how those two things intersect. And for those people that don't have or feel like racial justice is a zero-sum game, it's hard to think that climate change is a zero sum. And so if we're not simultaneously working on both, I think we one, don't fully understand what interdependence actually means on the planet and in organizational systems and structures. So I have a client who's a hedge fund. They're actually one of the good ones. I guess all of them say that, but they contribute quite a bit to environmental causes. They actually have a foundation that contributes to that. And we've been having conversations about, you really want to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but is your foundation actually looking at the intersections between your kind of very, very fervent belief in how you can transform climate change and putting quite a bit of money and resources towards it, and how you can impact social justice simultaneously? They're based in the UK, but their work is global. So we're having that conversation now. And I think those are the conversations we need to have. We can't keep having these parallel track conversations that one supersedes the other, or one is more important than the other. These things are impacting us in negative ways. And if we don't transform them, we all lose. So this isn't like, win or lose. This is, we all lose if we don't get this right. And if we do them together, I believe we can all win in a more substantive and sustainable way.
Thank you, Amri. Thank you, Ame. We have Michael Brazel, then John Carter, then Kate Cowie. Michael Brazel.
Thank you. I'm so excited about I'm emotional about it, about the work that you're doing and who you are, particularly who you are and the work you're doing. I'm a 84-year-old white man who does coaching and OD consulting. And for me, the building of trust is the thing that has to happen and the thing that has to be maintained. And I noticed that you both mentioned trust right at the beginning. So I've got a curiosity about if you could speak some about not only creating trust, but maintaining it, and how that's been going in this effort that you're doing. And also, I'd love to know more about what's happened since the summit. And I'm sure that there have been disappointments as well as triumphs. I want to say one more thing. I'm being emotional. I'm delighted to see young people like you, young BIPOC people like you, doing the kind of work that you're doing. I'm not going to be here that long. I'm going to be here as long as I can, but it's a delight for me to know that people that you are coming along and will be here in this world and supporting making things better. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Is Ame unmuted?
Amri, oh yeah, we've muted Ame, and okay, go ahead, Ame.
Hi, sorry about that. First, thank you so much for putting into my life today, and I will carry that energy to the event tonight. So thank you very much. I honor that. I think in terms of trust, when we were going into the summit, I was like, I just need a sliver of hope. I just need like a little, I don't need a lot, just a little, and then we better not screw it up, right? And so we've been in the working hard to not screw it up phase. And it's by showing up. It's not by doing everything perfectly, but it's showing up, and it's by being honest and candid and transparent. And when things don't work out or things are delayed, just explaining what's going on. It's allowing ourselves to be held accountable. They are competing priorities. So when I meet with a group and they're like, that thing, I'm like, yo, thank you. The kick in the butt is needed. Let me go back and pick that thing up and move it. So for me, it's staying in community. It is continuing to listen and trust the wisdom in the room. The capacity within the community, internal and external, it's just amazing, right? Every time I'm in a room with, whether it's a group of faculty or students, I am just super honored, right, to be able to hang out with these folks. And so for me, that journey is continuing to just be there, right? Show up, do what I said I could do to the best of my ability. And when we don't, own it and kind of move forward. And so you asked about what has happened since the summit. And so it took us about 9-10 months, but we did create our plan. So what we did was we took the outcomes of the summit, and we also created a vision, right? And we went and we took the dream and kind of analyzed all the pieces from the dream, and some really clear themes about, for the institution, is representation, but not representation in terms of demographics up, down, and across the institution, yes, but really about decision-making and resource sharing and power sharing, right? Really, and so such clarity from the community in terms of what they want to see. And I keep reminding folks of their vision. I was like, y'all came up with this, we didn't, right? In terms of, what we're now aiming towards, in terms of what success looks like in terms of the community. And so we have completed year one of the plan, and we have done what we said we were going to do in year one of the plan, although I like to be candid, and I was like, well, we kind of scaffolded it, right? And so we didn't put all the hard things in year one, so we've done everything we said we could do so we could continue building trust and a sense of goodwill. And then it gets harder as we go along. And actually encoded in the plan is the fact that we will have conversations with our external community, with our BIPOC communities, right, to make sure that we shared futures, shared agenda. I think in terms of, I wouldn't call it a disappointment. I think in terms of learning and continued stretching and humility is when we started, we started lifting our heads up a little bit, right? We've been so internally focused, right? I'm calling it the put on your mask first. And so when when we're able to breathe a little bit, and we started, we wanted to go put on the mask of our colleagues, I think for me, humble moment. I was like, oh, they haven't been on the journey. So we're stuck with everything that we did internally. We have to do it externally, right? All of the bearing witness that we did, all of the, and so I was like, wait, hold on, what? And I was like, so it was a recalibration moment for me, just in terms of, okay, here we go. You're going to be a surrogate for the system. Let's go. And it has been, again, just such learning. People are hurting and people are angry, but people are also incredibly generous, right? And people are they want the future to be different. And so it has been both hard and amazing at the same time. And I'm really excited to see where we go.
Can I just add a thing?
Please.
One of the things that I've seen in terms of your change is that once a part of the PSU community, always a part of the PSU community. They send me, or the PSU design and continuing team, I get the alerts, I get the invitations. It's mine to refuse. I get invited to the listening sessions. I get the updates from every one of the anchor teams or anchor groups around what they have accomplished. I get the cancellation notices. So in terms of an inclusive plan, that plan is there. I get to comment. And so that is not lost on that community, that the community is expanding, and the expectation is everyone will pay attention to what has been important in that summit.
Thank you, Kathy. Amri, yep. Anything to add?
It's hard to add something after that, so I'll stay quiet.
All right, Dr.
Whatever,
Carter.
fella.
Dr. Carter, you are up, sir.
Okay. Well, I want to start with saying that it was wonderful to hear about the work that you just reported out, both as an intervention and the outcome of it, and that particularly that you used a version of appreciative inquiry, being one of the founders of appreciative inquiry. I'm always excited about when people are using that methodology, particularly when they are actually doing it as appreciative inquiry rather than just positive thinking. Because I think much of what people are labeling as inquiry these days is actually being appreciative without the inquiry. But I also want to make a couple of other quick comments, and that's it. You know, life is not like a basketball game, and most long-term relationships are not like sports, which means that you don't have easy winners and losers, and then it's over. The minute in an actual relationship that's not transactional, the minute that you go to win-lose, it becomes lose-lose. And I think we need to keep that in mind in terms of the work that we're doing. And my tie to that to some extent is in this conversation in terms of large-scale interventions. I've been involved in some of the most innovative, creative, large-scale interventions that have been done around the world. But for the most part, no matter how successful they have been, a lot of the work is like silly putty. It happens and there's a lot of positive that comes out of it. And then it's like a rubber band. It kind of goes back with about 80% of it being what it was before. One of our colleagues was key to the climate change agreement that was made in Paris. In fact, she almost went psychotic getting that agreement done. But that agreement has not necessarily held, but there's still a movement going on in relationship to climate change. But I'm going to take the risk here of disagreeing with Ed, which the last time I did got me into pretty serious trouble with him. But I think there's no safe haven in relationship to climate change. And you can't split it in terms of rich and poor, or those that it's going to affect and those that it's not going to affect. It's going to affect everybody, all of us. And ultimately, if you think you're in a safe haven, people will do strange things when their lives are threatened or their children are threatened. I have a friend who owns 186 acres down in southern Ohio. And he has a cottage there, and he's got 3 years of food stored away for all the terrible things that may come with this climate change or other things. I tell him, you know, as soon as people find out that you got 3 years of food stored here, they're going to be at your house and they're going to take your food and they may take your life if you try and defend it. You know, so there is no safe haven of rich, poor, white, black, blue, yellow, US, et cetera, when it comes to climate change. And if we can't keep ourselves in a posture that there are only three places the work can get done. Either I do it, you do it, or we do it together. And the climate change is one of those places where we all, every single person has to do it together, or we will all suffer.
Ashe.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. I've also, again, it's an honor to be in your presence of all the work that you've pioneered over the years. I think that's a conversation in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space that needs to be reinforced. Is quite honestly, even in that space, none of this actually, there's no benefit to one group or the other if it's really transformational. And I think we've framed since the murder of George Floyd sometimes, and it's been challenging for me, is if we don't frame this in the way that this is about everybody, and this is about the only way it actually transforms is that we're at the table, we're understanding power, we're creating the dynamics around that and having people at the table to share that power so that we can make decisions that are impactful to entire communities. This is all, how would you say it? It's all an exercise in futility. And what I've seen with PSU and what I'm hoping to do with others that I work with is that we move from that space that this is going to help one or the other, but this is about everyone. And if it's not about everyone, it's not really the work, as we often hear in the diversity space. If it's not for everyone, it's not the work. And so climate change very much speaks to that, even to those who have their doubts about this so-called idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your response, and I particularly want to add, which I probably already said in what I said, but we can't assign the work to the people who are the most likely victims, or the people who are going to suffer the most, or the people who have the least amount of power.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carter. The inestimable Kate Cowie.
Well, my question is a very humble question from across the miles about the nature of human struggle. You spoke of the need for persistence, and yet, I think you said that the striving will continue beyond your lifetimes. How do you stay the course? And how do you help others stay the course? When I hear you speak, I understand that this work calls for an indomitable human spirit. So what is your source of personal strength when, in your words, being right doesn't transform anything? And how do you do this work with such grace?
Such an elegant framing of the question. So let me start there. I really appreciate so my first, let me start at the end. I don't know if I do the work with grace. I can promise you that is not the case, right? A lot of the time. My personal mission statement, my purpose is that, I exist to close the gap between potential and thriving, right? And so you distill everything I do, externally, internally, family, work, culture, community, whatever, that's it. And because I'm wired for that, because that is who I am, because that is what I'm about, the pool, like when you see something, the pool is there, right? And so this event that we were planning, and we said, we get like 70, 80 people, that would be good. Like, only 3% of Portland is Black, of Oregon is Black, 6 to 7% in the city of Portland. So like, not talking about, a huge community. And there were 2 days where nobody registered. And I was like, oops, right, okay. And I was like, I'm about to make some new friends on LinkedIn. We're about to figure out some new data, right? And so now we have 200 people coming on tonight, right? And so I think that in some ways stuff is not gonna work all the time, right? And stuff is, and so it's like you're gonna rest, and you're gonna be tired, and you're gonna be disappointed. But that pool, what are we, what's the thing that we're trying to do? And then it provides an impetus for kind of new pathways, but also the fact that we're not doing it alone, right? And that we have people who hold us, who help us, who encourage us, who challenge us, right? When we're giving up, or we're settling, or we're not striving the way we need to. All right.
I only go by grace. I don't have much more. My mom told me years ago, she goes, you're still living on the prayers of your grandmother and your ancestors. And I was like, man, that's a lot of storage. And she said, but you better get to work, because it ain't gonna last forever, right? And so I think I stay by that grace. And my purpose is more transformation of our minds, so that we can understand that we're not separated, that we're not divided by anything except for our minds. And if we don't recognize that, we really won't fully realize who we are. So that's why I exist, and it probably drives me. I mean, I also have a 3-year-old, and I'm 51. and I don't know how much longer I'm going to be around. I'm trying to do it, get as much in so that him and his experience on this planet, he can continue the work in a way very different than what we've done. Still transformational, still persistent, and fighting for what's right for everyone to live and thrive, but not doing it with the level of suffering that we've had to take. And I there's going to be some suffering, but I hope it's not the suffering that my ancestors had taken, and that the little bit of suffering proportionally that's just my mom. It's like I called her out. Just the proportional suffering that my ancestors went through, so we didn't have to have so much. What can we do to make sure that next generation has less and is coming together more as a we than an I or a me?
Wonderful. Thank you both. And we have time for another question, and we have Dr. Rainey with her hand up. Dr. Rainey.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. And I'm just so appreciative of this time of dialogue. And that I really appreciate your sharing with what I'm now calling leading while Black, and leading while being a member of a BIPOC group, because in the aftermath of all of the promise that came to us from companies of all kinds, much of my work these last few months, the last 12 months, has been focused on leaders who are members or who identify themselves as members of BIPOC, of the BIPOC identity group. And it's not easy for them. So I have been talking to them about leading while different, and to be mindful of that. And the thoughts that you shared today about how you manage that as a surrogate, and at the same time, about the history that is a part of you, even without your putting it there. So I want to thank you for that.
Last words, Dr. Lambert.
I just want to honor what Dr. Rainey said, and I want all the stuff, all the work that you've been doing. I want to, honor your body of work, but this everything you said, I just want to co-sign it, and thank you for naming that. And I want to thank you all for joining us in the space, for encouraging us, for the work that you're doing in your spaces. Special thanks to Dr. Royal and Amri, and I'll turn it over to Amri for your final words. The journey continues.
I'm extremely grateful, to be a part of a celebration. Happy birthday, NTL. And I hope there's blessings that I can be here in the 100th anniversary with you 25 years from now. And thank you. It's been it's the end of my day, but it's been the most richest part of my week. And I thank you for allowing me to end my week on such a note with such amazing folks.
May I give you a title? Because titles are given, not taken.
That's very true, Dr. Nana.
So forever and from now on, we will address you as Baba Beji. You see me, Ame. That is the title that means father of twins. I am Iya Beji and you are Baba Beji. And so now you know these things. What an honor. Thank you for caring for the Geminis of the world.
And for